When I signed that paper, I thought I was doing something good. Something kind. Something that would make my late husband proud of me. But kindness, sometimes it turns around and tests you. I still remember that day. The air was warm, the sun high, and the man sitting across from me smiled as if the world was gentle. I thought I knew him. I thought trust was enough. 3 months later, I stood by my window watching strangers put up a fence on my own land. That's when I learned what regret really feels like. It doesn't come as a storm. It comes as silence. You just stand there, quiet, trying to understand how something you gave out of love could come back as pain. And that was the beginning of the story I want to share with you today. It's not about money or property, really. It's about trust, and how sometimes the heart can be too soft for its own good. Hello, everyone. My name is Grandma Ruth, and this is my own story. Thank you for being here and for listening with your hearts. If my story touches you in some way, please subscribe to this channel and tell me in the comments where you're from. I love knowing who's sitting with me tonight, listening. And if you have your own story about trust, kindness, or regret, share it. Someone out there might need to hear it. Now, let me take you back to the small town where this all began. I've lived in the same town my whole life. It's not big, but it has everything a heart needs: fields that glow gold in summer, neighbors who wave when they drive by, and mornings that smell of fresh bread from the bakery on Main Street. My husband, Henry, built our little house with his own hands. He was a quiet man, always humming when he worked. After he passed away, the house felt emptier than I could bear. We never had children, but we had land, 6 acres of green stretch behind our home, where we planted vegetables and raised chickens. Henry used to call it our piece of peace. After he was gone, I kept the land because it felt like keeping him close. I'd wake early, brew my tea, and watch the sunrise over those fields. It made me feel safe. But age, as it does, began to slow me down. The soil became heavy, and my back wasn't what it used to be. I couldn't keep up with the planting anymore. That's when David came into the picture. David was the son of my old friend Margaret. He'd just moved back from the city after losing his job. I'd known him since he was a boy, kind eyes, polite, always helping with groceries or fixing fences. One morning, he stopped by with a basket of apples. "Aunt Ruth," he said, though I wasn't really his aunt, "I noticed your fields are getting a bit wild. Want me to help clear them up?" I smiled, grateful. "That would be lovely, David. I've been meaning to, but these knees of mine don't listen anymore." He laughed. "Then let me do the listening for you." And just like that, he began coming around every week. He mowed, trimmed, planted new seeds. I'd bring him lemonade, and we'd talk about the old days. Soon, the land looked beautiful again, like Henry had never left. Sometimes, when I watched David work, I felt something warm in my heart. Not love, not exactly, but the comfort of having someone who cared. As weeks turned into months, I began to trust him more. He'd bring me groceries, drive me to the doctor, even fix the broken railing by the porch. Neighbors started saying, "You're lucky, Ruth. That young man's like family." And I believed it. One evening, we sat under the oak tree that marked the corner of my land. The air smelled of grass and rain. He said softly, "Aunt Ruth, you know, I've been thinking. If I could use part of your land, I could start a small garden business. Flowers, herbs, people in town would love it. Of course, I'd share the profit with you." I hesitated. "That sounds nice, David, but I don't know much about business." He smiled. "You wouldn't have to worry about a thing. I'd handle it all. You'd still own everything. It would just be paperwork so I can apply for the permits." He spoke gently, carefully. His tone was respectful, reassuring. And I wanted to help him. After all, he'd helped me so much. So, a few days later, when he brought a stack of papers, I didn't read them too closely. I just signed. I told myself it was kindness. I told myself Henry would have done the same. For a while, everything was fine. David started his flower garden, and it looked lovely. People came by to buy herbs and bouquets. He was polite to everyone, and he always made sure I had a share of the vegetables. But slowly, little things started to change. He stopped coming by as often. He built a small shed near the far fence without asking me. And one morning, I saw a sign near the road that said, "Dean's Floral Farm, private property." I stood there for a long time, the wine tugging at my shawl, reading that word again and again, private. My land. My Henry's land. And that's when the uneasiness began. The sign stayed there for days before I gathered enough courage to ask David about it. He came by one afternoon, cheerful as ever, his hands smelling of soil and rosemary. "David," I said softly, "I saw the sign by the road. It says, private property. Why would it say that?" He looked away, rubbing his palms together. "Oh, that? It's just for insurance and business registration, Aunt Ruth. You know how formalities go these days." I nodded slowly, though something inside me stirred uneasily. But then a week later, I noticed a couple walking across the back field, measuring the ground. They had papers and a camera. When I asked them what they were doing, they said they were checking the boundaries of the new parcel. I remember my heart tightening in my chest. That night, I pulled out the documents I had signed months before. They were still neatly folded in my kitchen drawer. The print was small, and my eyes struggled to read it under the lamp. But as I read, my hands began to tremble. The paper didn't give David permission to use the land. It transferred it. Every acre. Every inch Henry and I had worked for. It was gone. I sat there for hours, staring at the signature that was mine. The one I had placed with trust and love. How could he do this? And yet, how could I have been so blind? The next morning, I went to his little flower shed. He was there, humming to himself, cutting sunflowers. "David," I said, my voice shaking, "I read the papers." He froze. "You told me it was just business permission," I whispered. "You didn't say you were taking the land." He sighed and set down the shears. "Aunt Ruth, you gave it to me. You signed it. I told you I needed ownership to get the permits and loans." I stepped back. "You told me I would still own it." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to the fence and stared into the distance. You don't understand, Aunt Ruth. I needed a start. You don't even use the land anymore. I'm making something of it. You should be proud. Proud. That word cut deeper than any knife. That evening, I couldn't eat. I sat by the window, the one facing the fields that no longer belonged to me, and I cried. Not loud tears. Just quiet ones. The kind that fall slowly and sting when they reach your lips. I kept thinking of Henry, how he used to run his fingers through the soil and smile. I had broken the promise I made to him, that I would protect our land, no matter what. For days, I avoided everyone. Even my friend Marjorie knocked on the door, and I pretended I wasn't home. But word spreads fast in small towns. People began to whisper. Some said I had been foolish. Others said David was only doing what life taught him, to take what's offered. I didn't have the strength to argue. All I wanted was peace again. One rainy afternoon, I received a letter in the mail. It had no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a check. The handwriting was neat, David's. It read, Aunt Ruth, I know you're angry, and I understand. But I've already sold part of the land to pay my debts. I can't undo it. Please use this money to make things easier. I'm sorry. The check was for $10,000. But what was I supposed to buy with that? You can't buy back trust. You can't buy back memories. I tore the check in half and threw it in the trash. That night, I sat in my kitchen, holding Henry's old photograph. Henry, I whispered, I failed you. And then something inside me broke, but in a quiet way. Not with anger, but with resolve. I decided I wasn't going to fight him through courts or shout in the streets. That's not who I am. But I wasn't going to let him win my heart, either. So I began writing letters to the local council, to the buyers, to the registrar's office. I explained my situation in calm words. I sent copies of my medical records to show I was not in full health when I signed. It took weeks, but one morning, a letter arrived from the council. Due to irregularities in the property transfer and the absence of legal counsel for the original owner, the case will be reviewed. I don't think I'd ever felt that kind of hope before, small, fragile, but alive. David came by 2 days later. He looked angry. You went to the council, he said. I nodded quietly. I had to, David. You tricked me. He exhaled sharply. You'll just make it worse. The buyers will sue me, and you'll lose everything. Why can't you just let it go? Because it's not just land, I said softly. It's my life story. It's the only place I still feel him, Henry. He turned to leave but stopped at the door. For a moment, I thought I saw guilt in his eyes. But then he walked away. That was the last time I saw him for a long while. Weeks passed. I prayed every morning before I opened the mail, and one afternoon, the news finally came. The council's review had concluded. The transfer was void. My land was legally restored. I held that letter close to my chest and wept, not just for relief, but for what was lost in the process. Because sometimes, when you win back what was taken, you still lose something along the way, your innocence, your trust, your warmth toward others. Life became quiet again.